Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good morning. So we'd like to welcome all of you to this lecture. Welcome those who are in Tshwane at the NSG, at the ZK Matthews Hall, and those that are online. Thank you very much for making time to attend this program. My name is Pindle Balene, Director General in the Presidency and Secretary to Cabinet. Colleagues, we welcome you to this masterclass series that's run by the National School of Government. And all of this is done in order to ensure that we build a capable, ethical, and developmental state, which is the first priority of the sixth administration. The focus for today would be on the developmental part of that sentence: capable, ethical, and developmental. And we'll be focusing on developmental, in particular, the structural transformation of the economy and therefore of the society. So the theme for today's class, masterclass, is South Africa at a crossroads, the need for a sustainable structural transformation. We've got a very distinguished faculty that's going to assist us navigate this topic, ideas that we keep collecting and putting together in order to make sure that as public servants, we are well equipped to deal with the challenges of the day. We started a few minutes behind time. We apologize for that, but we are going to kick off and see how fast we can run. I'm going to call the first speaker, the principal of the National School of Government, Professor Ngaweni, to come and do the opening, and welcome. Can we please give him a round of applause?
Thank you very much, DG Baleni. Good morning to all of you, colleagues, and especially our special guest, Professor Hajun Chang, with the colleagues from SOAS who are accompanying him, the colleagues who are joining us online, the Minister Zigalala, who's a very diligent student of the National School of Government. Welcome to you, Minister. There are several others who are joining online, including the DGs and the DGs who are here. You are all warm welcome. So as the DG indicated, colleagues, this is part of the masterclass series that we have been hosting. I had said to the colleagues a few years ago, and I repeated it a few months ago, that our masterclass series is becoming so popular that there is no person who will say no to come to the NSG if that person was invited. We can make a phone call to everybody everywhere in the world to come and engage with us in the public sector as a whole, including both elected as well as appointed officials who are following very keenly some of these engagements that we are having. First, I must apologize. The colleagues from Treasury will not be here. They're dealing with another pressure point, but they will be here to engage with the delegation on Thursday when they return here for a formal meeting, which will be hosted here at the NSG. And of course, they will engage with the Minister of Finance and others. These masterclass conversations, colleagues, are meant for yourselves to engage with leading experts on various topics. So we expect you to engage. As the DG will be facilitating, you can ask difficult questions. These are experts. Of course, there might be limitations if we ask them South African too specific questions, but broadly speaking, based on their expertise, they should be able to engage with a number of key questions about economies that work and economies that are stuck in the middle income trap, like the South African economy. So once again, we're glad to have all of you here at the NSG, and those who are online, please do engage with the colleague and send your questions. We will deal with them later on as you respond. We will also give you an opportunity to interact later on during the Q&A session. So thank you once again, DG, and welcome to all of you colleagues to the NSG. Please do put your phones on silent so that we don't interrupt the flow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm word of welcome, Principal. Colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we'll move to the main dish. The main speaker for the day of who is going to lead the masterclass is Professor Hajun Cheng. Professor Hajun Cheng is a distinguished research professor of economics at SOAS, University of London. Previously, he taught at the Faculty of Economics at the University of Cambridge from 1990 to 2022. In addition to numerous journal articles and book chapters, he has published 17 authored books, 5 co-authored, and 11 edited books, 7 co-edited. His main books include The Political Economy of Industrial Policy, issued in 1994, Kicking Away the Ladder, 2002, Bad Samaritans, 2007, 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, 2010, Economics, The User's Guide, 2014, as well as Edible Economics, 2022. His writings have been translated and published in 45 languages and 46 countries. Worldwide, his books have sold around 2.5 million copies. Cheng has advised numerous international organizations, national governments, civil society organizations, and corporations, both private sector as well as public. He is currently a member of the CDP, a committee for policy for the development of policy, the highest advisory body of the United Nations on development issues, as well as committees overseeing or advising other international organizations such as the UNRISD, the AIIB, and many academic bodies such as the IDS and Sussex. Cheng is the winner of the 2003 Gunnar Medal Prize and the 2005 Wazili Leontief Prize. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. But ladies and gentlemen, clearly a distinguished scholar. Can we please put our hands and give him a round applause of welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I need to use slides. If I can, there's only one file there. Can I control it with this? Okay, yeah, while we are getting ready for the PowerPoint, it is my great honor and pleasure to give a masterclass at the National School of Government. You know, I have been coming to this country since 1991. I was in this conference in Cape Town right after the end of apartheid was announced, and they collected international scholars working on
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I should use that. I turned it off. Or should I? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a Tibetan singing bowl. Yeah, so that conference led to the creation of Merck, which then was replaced by Gear. And yeah, I mean, I can tell you more about my own personal experience with this country. But yeah, I must have come here at least 15 times, possibly close to 20 in the last 30 years. And then I realized that this year is almost 30 years since apartheid was ended in 1994. And yeah, I would say that the country has, yeah, that can come a bit later, but achieved a lot in those 3 decades. I mean, above all, it has made a peaceful transition from a race-based dictatorship to a multi-ethnic democracy. And that was despite the unthinkable amount of grievances from the injustice that had been done to the non-white population for centuries. Yeah? I mean, if it was any other country, the country would have blown up. Yeah? So that in that sense, that political transition, whatever other misgivings you might have, is a singular achievement. Yeah? And we shouldn't forget that. During this period, the country almost doubled its per capita income from $3,548 to $6,773. Infant mortality, which is a good indicator of social arrangements as well as material progress, has been almost halved from 46 per 1,000 live birth to 26. So these are impressive achievements. But a closer look reveals that the country's socio-economic performance since the end of apartheid has been very disappointing. And in order to put South Africa's performance into perspective, I have created a group of reference economies listed according to their level of per capita income today. So I've selected countries that in some ways had or have similarities with South Africa, and I'll keep constantly referring to these countries, at least subset of these countries, depending on the topic, because when we judge the achievements, you have to have some reference, yeah. Because compared to, I don't know, the Neolithic age, that everyone's doing great, yeah. But that's not the point. Yeah? You need to see whether you are doing as well as you could be, and in doing that, looking at this the reference group is quite useful. So in this slide, you can see that the doubling of South Africa's per capita income in the last 3 decades on its own may sound quite impressive, but the country's relative performance has been very poor, because since the 1994, the country's relative ranking within this group has fallen from number 4 to number 7 in terms of per capita income, and only just number 7. Yeah? I mean, the South Africa's per capita income is like 2% higher than the bottom one, that is Colombia. If you especially compare it with a country like the South Korea, which in 1962 had an income that was basically 20% that of South Africa's. Today, the position is exactly reversed. Yeah, South Korea's income is at 5 times that of South Africa's. Yeah? I mean, to be precise, the South Africa had per capita income 5.2 times higher than that of South Korea in 1962. And today, South Korea's per capita income 4.8 times higher than that of South Africa, but that almost exact reversal of the position. A country that used to be 5 times richer is now 5 times poorer. It is also interesting to note that half of the countries in this group of 8, including the supposed basket case of Argentina, have been able to maintain their relative standing within this group over the last 60 years. So Argentina used to be number 1, is number 2, although, yeah, with the election of this crazy libertarian president, the country could be heading downward in a massive way. The big changes in this group was that on the positive side, the South Korea and China rising from number 7 to 1, rising from, oh, sorry, this is a mistake of 8, number 8 to 3. And on the negative side, were Colombia and South Africa falling from number 2 and 3 in 1962 to numbers 7 and 8 today. In terms of inequality, South Africa has performed very poorly in the last 3 decades. We all know that the country has one of the highest levels of inequality in the world, but what is worrying is the trend. And in this regard, a comparison with Brazil, another country with one of the world's highest levels of inequality and with a similar level of per capita income, is instructive. In 1993, on the eve of the end of apartheid, South Korea, Africa and Brazil had essentially the same level of inequality. These are Gini coefficients. For those who are not familiar with this, that basically is that the number between 0 and 1. 0 is at the perfect equality, 1 is perfect inequality. So the higher the number is, the more unequal you are. And yeah, in 1993, it was essentially the same. Brazil slightly more unequal. And that kind of continued until the 2000. And then there was a reversal, because in Brazil, you had the advent of the Workers' Party regime under Lula and then Dilma. And inequality, still very high by international standard, started falling continuously almost. Whereas in South Africa, between 2000 and 2005, there was quite a big jump. And then it has essentially stayed at that level. In South Africa, high inequality is closely related to high unemployment, of course. Unemployment situation in South Africa has always been bad, but it has become worse and worse. So unemployment rate used to be around 20% until the 2000s, and then it kept creeping up. In this figure, the graph extracted from the World Bank data set is the unemployment rate in 2022 stood at 29%, 29.8%. And according to the latest figure cited by my friend Professor Imran Balodia of Wits University, it reached 32.6% in June of this year. And Imran estimates that if you include discouraged workers, namely workers who want to work but have given up on the job search because they couldn't find anything, the figure could be as high as 44%. Life expectancy, arguably the best summary indicator of a country's human well-being. Has basically stayed the same in the last 30 years. Initially a dip, and then the slow climb, and then the fall again, obviously that related to COVID pandemic and so on. But just look at the difference with this compared to countries. I mean, not to speak of South Korea, even compared to countries like Thailand, Colombia, Brazil, in all these countries, life expectancy was substantially higher than that of South Africa's, but in these countries, it kept climbing up. And in South Africa, it basically stayed at the same level. So now the relative gap is even larger. Even in terms of infant mortality, where the South Africa has done quite well, the relative performance has been poor. I mean, once again, the contrast with Brazil is quite striking. Back in 1994, these infant mortalities in the two countries were once again more or less at the same level. Now in the South Africa, it for a while actually increased and then fell. In Brazil, it fell almost continuously. So now Brazil's infant mortality is basically half that of South Africa's, 13 against 26. Well, I can go on, but you get the picture. South Africa's economic and social performances in the post-apartheid period have been very poor, especially when compared to those reference economies that I cited. And the performance is even more disappointing when we recall the high expectations that we all had back in 1994. The causes of this poor socioeconomic performance are many, but in my view, the most important cause is the country's inability to achieve sustainable structural transformation. Now, these days, when you talk about the word the sustainable, people tend to equate it with environmental or ecological sustainability, which of course is a critical new dimension that needs to be incorporated into any development strategy. And I'll be talking about it more later. But at this point, I would like to point out that a developmental path should also be economically and socially sustainable. Economic sustainability means that the country has to be able to constantly upgrade its productive structure and the underlying productive capabilities so that it can keep up with the rest of the world and improve its living standard in the long run. As the relative income figures have shown, South Africa has failed quite badly in this regard, especially when compared to the 1960s, but even if you count it from the end of the apartheid. Social sustainability means that economic development is achieved in a way that is inclusive so that all members of society benefit from the process to a decent extent. Of course, this is a very vague definition. I mean, what is a decent extent? I mean, it's politically and ethically debatable, but let's at this stage leave it like that. This is necessary because without such inclusion, the society will be ridden with conflicts and tear itself apart in the long run. As well as the well-known statistics about violence, South Africa's statistics on inequality, unemployment, life expectancy, infant mortality, and many others all tell the story of a highly iniquitous and conflict-ridden society that is not sustainable in the long run in the social sense. And before I move on to the economic and ecological sustainability, I would like to point out that the challenge of sustainability across economic, social, and ecological dimensions are interdependent. So that how you kind of maintain the social sustainability, how you make the economy more sustainable, these are all related to the ecological sustainability and vice versa. And this means that policies for sustainable structural transformation need to be designed in explicit recognition of this interdependence. Yeah? So you can't just say that, well, we'll make the economy grow faster first and then redistribute and then take care of the environment. Yeah? You have to do all of these things all at the same time. Yeah? Okay, so far I have painted a rather gloomy picture of South Africa's current situation. But having been an observer of this country in the last 3 decades, I believe that the country has the political machinery, human resources, knowledge, and natural resources to turn the situation around and launch itself onto a new path of sustainable structural transformation. If you could achieve that miraculous political transition without shedding much blood, you can do anything, really. I mean, it's a matter of doing what is required. Yeah? Now, before discussing what you need to change in order to achieve this transformation, let me go into a bit of detail on the state of South African economy. Once upon a time, South Africa was literally the most industrialized nation outside the core capitalist world. In 1961, per capita manufacturing value added of South Africa, that is essentially GDP created in the manufacturing sector, was 61% that of Japan and 15% that of the US. So quite well behind the core capitalist countries, but it was 6.3 times higher than that of Korea and Taiwan, and 2.8 times higher than that of Brazil. In the post-apartheid period, it has experienced, however, a massive deindustrialization. Some call it premature deindustrialization because it is natural for rich countries to experience deindustrialization, namely the fall in the share of manufacturing in GDP, but the countries shouldn't experience it at the level of the income that South Africa, Brazil, and so on have. Yeah? But unfortunately, all of these countries have experienced that. And in South Africa, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the manufacturing sector used to account for 22, 23, 24% of GDP. It started to decline in the early 90s, but the decline was accelerated in the post-apartheid period, and the share of manufacturing is now only about 12% of GDP. Yeah? I mean, the experience is the experience looks slightly more positive when you compare with that of Brazil, which had even greater fall, even from greater heights to an even lower level. But apart from Brazil, there is no country that has experienced South Africa's kind of deindustrialization. And as a result, South Africa is today not even a serious manufacturing nation. Can I have a glass of water? South Africa's, thank you, per capita manufacturing value added is only 9% that of Japan. Oh, it used to be, yeah, 61%. And only 12% that of Korea instead of over 6 times, and so on. And yeah, the other resource-dependent economy that is rich is Australia. And even if you want to become Australia rather than Germany or South Korea, South Africa needs to increase its the manufacturing output by 4 times. Yeah. So you can see how manufacturing has been depleted, and the quality of what remains is quite poor. Because if you look at this World Bank, oh yeah, this is per capita output. Yeah, I'll get back to this later, but yeah, you can see that now, you know, is got manufacturing output that is only 15% that of the US. Well, actually, it's similar to what it used to be, because the US itself has deindustrialized a lot, but now they're looking very, very poor. Huh? And if you look at the World Bank data, sorry, you need data on the share of medium tech and high tech industries in the manufacturing sector, you see that it's one of the least it's got one of the least sophisticated manufacturing sector. I mean, the share is similar to that of countries like Senegal and Pakistan, which have per capita income that is only 1/4 that of the South Africa's. Yeah? This is at a very low tech manufacturing. There are a couple of sectors that have done well, like machinery and sorry, machinery and equipment, and motor vehicles and parts. These 2 sectors, but these 2 sectors jointly account for only 13% of the manufacturing sector, which means that they jointly account for only about 1.5% of the entire economy. I mean, however well these sectors may be doing, they are too small to pull the economy ahead. This is the reality. And reflecting this low technological content of manufacturing in the country does really a pitiful amount of research and development. I mean, there's always the Brazil and Argentina, which prevent South Africa from being the bottom of the league. But you know, basically these 3 economies, well, at least in terms of R&D, Brazil is doing a lot better. I mean, compared to, you know, even China and Malaysia, not to speak of South Korea, Sweden, Germany, the level of the R&D, this is the research and development spending as a proportion of GDP, is minuscule. Yeah? And this lack of R&D in turn makes industry upgrading even more difficult. Yeah? So there's a vicious circle there. Of course, when I say all these things to worry about the deindustrialization of countries like South Africa and Brazil, many people argue, oh, there's nothing to worry about. We now live in post-industrial knowledge economy in which manufacturing is a low-grade activity that is only done by low-wage countries like China, although China is now not a low-wage country anymore. And services like finance, logistics, design, these are the new engines of economic development. But let me tell you, this is a very, very misleading argument. First of all, manufacturing has inherently faster productivity growth than agricultural services because it is inherently more open to mechanization and use of chemical process. Yeah? So inherently, it has a faster productive growth, and it's where most R&Ds are conducted. Yeah? Even in countries like the US and the UK, where manufacturing now barely accounts for 10% of GDP, 60–70% of R&Ds are done in the manufacturing sector. Yeah? When you go to economies like the Korea or Germany, where manufacturing still account for 20-25% of GDP, 80-90% of the R&D is done in the manufacturing sector. And in relation to ecological sustainability, this means that without the manufacturing sector, you are not going to be able to generate the new technologies needed for ecological transition. Renewable energy, advanced digital production technology, and so on. And you will have to rely on the rich countries to provide you with these technologies, thereby sustaining the relationship of technological dependency as in the past. Manufacturing sector also enables productivity growth in other sectors by supplying inputs. So fertilizer and other agrochemicals for agriculture, computers for modern service firms, and also organization innovation. Supermarkets these days use inventory management techniques that are developed by manufacturing companies, especially companies like Toyota with this just-in-time delivery. I mean, in agriculture, the advanced agriculture firms that, especially in countries like Brazil, the Netherlands, use the computer-controlled flow management that learn from chemical industries. So that they control do computer control feeding, computer control spraying, and all that. So actually, its impact is not just in its own sector, but that spills over into other sectors, because that's where most of the inputs for other industries like agriculture and services are produced. Also, many high-value services, banking, transport, design, management, consulting, they are heavily dependent on manufacturing firms as customers. They don't normally sell to retail customers. I mean, banks, of course, they have retail customers, but they make most of the money in dealing with the productive enterprises, not from the ordinary consumers. I mean, the management, consulting, design, I mean, they don't sell to you and me. I mean, they sell to manufacturing companies. And this is probably why countries like Switzerland and Singapore, which are often touted as examples of post-industrial knowledge economy, are actually some of the strongest manufacturing nations in the world. They have literally some of the highest manufacturing value added per capita in the world. So, fact checking is very important. You hear these things and then you just accept it. Oh yeah, Singapore, they are doing well because of services. No. At the foundation is the manufacturing sector. Yeah, other amazing facts about Singapore, that you may have heard of it as an economy that engages in free trade and welcomes foreign investment, which of course is true, but you would have never heard that 90% of land in Singapore is owned by the government, 85% of housing is provided by the government, and staggering 22% of GDP is produced by state-owned enterprises, including the famous Singapore Airlines. So please always check what the reality is. In Britain, when they were voting for Brexit, so-called, to exit the European Union, some of the supporters of Brexit were saying, "Oh, we want to make the UK Singapore on the Thames." I was laughing my head off. So that we want to start by nationalizing 90% of the land. Seriously, I mean that I'm not saying that you should copy any particular country, but when you learn from other countries, please look closely what they really are, because they rarely are what you are told they are, especially if that piece of information comes from the World Bank, the IMF, and mainstream economists. And also in the context of South Africa, manufacturing is important for employment creation, because manufacturing sector is the strongest driver for secure livelihood through secure employment. Brazil has achieved quite a lot in terms of reducing inequality and so on, but those are very precarious achievements. Because the social spending, the Bolsa Familia, the cash transfers, they can be abolished with a stroke of a pen. But even the worst that the right-wing government will not come and say we are going to shut down these factories because we don't want workers to have a secure livelihood. And last but not least, manufacturing is good for macroeconomic stability, as it is far more stable as a source of government revenue and export earnings than primary commodities and sectors associated with them. So, well, I mean, enough reasons then you need, but all of this show that South Africa needs a strong program of reindustrialization. It needs to rebuild this manufacturing sector. Of course, not in the exact same form that you used to have. I mean, now that ecological sustainability is becoming critical, technologies are changing. The global supply chains are very different from what they used to be 30, 40 years ago. So you need to have a strong program of reindustrialization. And what do you have to do? I mean, I don't believe in some foreigner flying in for a few days and telling countries what to do. I mean, that's what the World Bank and the IMF have been doing for the last 40 years. So I'm not going to repeat that, but I would like to kind of point to the problems that I see. I mean, solutions will have to be found by you. Because what do I know about South Africa? But I would like to raise issues. So first of all, I agree that since about 2007, South Africa's trade and industrial policy have been conducted in the right direction. Before that, it was a different proposition. Back in 1997, I wrote this report critically assessing the state of industrial policy in South Africa for TEPS, the Trade and Industrial Policy Secretariat. And yeah, I was very critical, and for the next 7 years, I didn't get any invitation to the country. I don't know whether you necessarily had a blacklist, but I was probably on it, But that changed after 2006, 7, 8. Policy direction has shifted into the right direction, but it is far too weak. Basically, you need more forceful and larger scale policies in that direction. And these are, I mean, there's no magic cure there, because we know what kind of industrial policies you need in order to develop your economy from historical experiences of today's rich countries that I talk about in my earlier books that DG kindly cited in introducing me. and also the industrial policy that is being used in the rich countries and other developing countries today. So this is a report that I co-authored with a couple of junior colleagues for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, or ECA, in which we detailed quite a bit about the current industrial policy practices. So it's not as if there's some magic formula, I mean, hidden in, I don't know, some monasteries in the mountains of Italy, you know. I mean, you don't have to hack into the secret database of the International Monetary Fund to find this. Yeah? It's all there. You've been using it. Yeah, you also only need to focus on certain things more than now. You need to do some things more strongly, do other things more weakly. Yeah. So there's no secret formula there, but basically you need to pull out all the guns, yeah, tariffs, subsidies, regulation of foreign direct investment to encourage the local capacity building. So this could take forms of local contents requirement for technology transfer, requirement for the training of local workforce, and any number of things. You also need to strategically use state-owned enterprises. Yeah? I've given you the example of Singapore, yeah? France, Taiwan, Norway, they all use that state-owned enterprises very, very strategically. The US, unbeknownst to most people, the US has the most successful state-owned enterprise in the world. Yeah? Only that it's not called a state-owned enterprise, it's called the US military. Yeah? No, because almost all the technologies that are at the foundation of today's the digital economy, they were initially developed by the US military. Huh? So computer, internet, GPS, these are all developed with funding from the Pentagon, aircraft industry, US Air Forces, of course, but known to very few people, the US Navy funded almost all the initial research on semiconductors. Yeah, but of course that Americans call this defense policy, not industrial policy, and tell other countries not to do industrial policy, and other countries stupidly, including my own country, South Korea, despite this earlier success in industrial policy, now tries not to do it because the Americans have told them, but this is not what we do. Yeah, so it's that like one of those guys that you had in your high schools, I mean, these guys study secretly very, very hard, and then exam time comes and he or she will tell you, oh, let's go and meet some boys and girls, let's go dancing. Yeah? And then you think, okay, and she or he will say, clever people don't study. Yeah? I mean, it's stupid to do well in exam by studying hard. Yeah? And you believe that. Yeah? I mean, that person's a bastard, but you're a fool. Yeah? You need to use your procurement policy more actively. You need to invest in infrastructure, R&D skills. You need to have a weak protection of intellectual property rights. Yeah, yeah, because today they may say, oh, that you need to respect intellectual property rights, but rich countries today, when they were trying to develop their economies, they stole technologies from other people, center, left, and right. Yeah, they didn't have patent law. Yeah, they broke it all the time. Yeah, they had the organized industrial espionage. Yeah, they complain about China engaging in industrial espionage, but this is what the British, the French, Dutch, everyone did that when they were trying to develop. And in using these policies, South Africa and other developing countries need to use all the available policy space. You know, most developing countries, including South Africa, they are not even using the full tariff allowance that is written into the WTO. Yeah? I mean, these tariff the allowances differ according to the countries. Yeah? So that some poor African economies that they didn't bind their tariff at all. In theory, they could use 100% tariff. I mean, South Africa bound it at about 30%. Yeah? But the average industrial tariff rate of developing countries these days is 10%. Yeah? I mean, even the ones that bound their tariffs at a relatively low level can go up to easily 20, 25%. Yeah? And they are not doing that. Yeah? Also, the developing countries, including South Africa, need to use subsidies accepted by the WTO. So there are subsidies that are, I mean, that can be legally challenged, but are rarely challenged in the WTO, like subsidies for R&D, regional equalization, green energy, because these are staples of US and EU industrial policies. Yeah? So they made these rules that make it easier to use these rules, the tools. So developing countries should use them too. Yeah? Especially when, you know, the EU and the US are now violating WTO rules openly in the name of green transition. Yeah? So EU's the CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism, is in violation of tariff ceilings, local contents requirement put on electric cars when they give subsidies to customers in the US. It's a violation of the local contents requirement, but they are using them. You know, I sometimes joke that the WTO has become the best friend of lazy government officials in developing countries. Yeah? Because when your minister tells you to do something, the easiest the answer will be, minister, is banned by the WTO. The minister is not going to run to the library, go through 750 pages of WTO agreement, and come back to you and say, no, you can do it. No, this is a serious issue, because there's undue degree of pessimism and passivity. There are lots of holes that you can exploit in the WTO agreement. And there are a lot of things that are not even covered by the WTO. Yeah? Don't think that the industrial policy is impossible. Yeah, it's more constrained than before, but there's a lot of things to do. Yeah? And then South Africa needs to introduce policy measures, whether it's fiscal, financial, industrial, to promote targeted investment in energy and infrastructure. In the short run, these need to be geared towards alleviating the electricity crisis and shortage of port facilities that are currently hampering industrial development. But in the longer run, you need a more ambitious strategy to use these investments to increase the ecological sustainability of the country's development path. So first of all, I think you need a politically and socially sustainable exit strategy from the coal industry. Yeah? You have to get out of it, but then you can't get out of it by just closing down coal mines. Yeah? I mean, a lot of people's livelihood depend on it. Yeah, a lot of regions that are dependent on it. You can't just do it like that, but you need a strategy. Yeah? I don't know what, because I don't know enough about this country, but you need to come up with something. There should be investment in renewable energy. Yeah, sorry, I thought I put wind there, but I forgot to do that. Solar, wind, green hydrogen. Oops. And then there has to be investment in transportation and habitation infrastructure that reduce energy requirement and carbon emission. Yeah? I mean, frankly, the urban areas that are too spread out. Yeah? Partly driven by the old, the apartheid style of living, yeah, in which the white people used to live like the feudal lords that in Europe, yeah, but also as a result of the apartheid policy, which created all these far-flung townships with very, very poor, if not non-existent, transportation link with the main cities. Yeah? You have to change this. Yeah? Because if you have a living space like this, you cannot blame people for driving. Yeah? You know, a lot of Europeans find it easy to feel virtuous against the Americans because, they say, oh, I cycle 11 miles each way to go to work and come back. Yeah? Why can't the Americans do it? Yeah? Well, the Americans cannot do it because they live 80 miles away from the city in a suburb. Yeah? I mean, if you cycle 80 miles each way to commute, you will have no time to sleep. Yeah? Yeah, so you cannot blame those people for driving. Yeah? So you have to change that infrastructure. Yeah? This country has the same problem. Yeah? I mean, all these suburbs, the Stanton, Brainston, the Melrose, yeah. I mean, there's the relatively poor public transport, yeah. Living space also needs to be reorganized, yeah. And also in making this ecological transition, you need to exploit what some people call green windows of opportunity. Yeah? So new windows of opportunity opened up by the emergence of new industries, new economic paradigms. Yeah? And exploiting this new windows of opportunity enable you to catch up faster or even leapfrog over the more advanced countries. Yeah? A lot of people agree that the entry into electronics industry, early entry into electronics industry by the East Asian countries like Korea, Taiwan, and so on, helped them develop faster and leapfrog a lot of other economies. Yeah? Because they were already in electronics, obviously in the beginning at the very bottom of the International Division of Labor, but already in the electronics industry, where it was an industry that only existed in the US, yeah? And a bit of Japan. Yeah? European countries are far behind. Yeah? So with these new industries, you could do that. So processing of minerals critical for green transition. South Africa has platinum, cobalt, nickel, and others. It should also develop industries producing machines and equipment for renewable energy and other green industries. So batteries, electric cars, electrolysis machines. It needs to develop industries producing existing things without using fossil fuels, steel, cement, fertilizer, petrochemical products. Many people don't know this, but a lot of fossil fuel is actually used to produce things like steel and cement. Yeah, I mean the proportion of fossil fuel that is used as fuel is actually not that high. Yeah, we have a terrible problem here because we do not have technologies to produce all these basic raw materials of modern industrial economy like steel, cement, fertilizer, without using fossil fuel. Yeah? So we need to develop those industries. And yeah, I mean, it was is a dubious owner, but this is a country that managed to extract oil from coal Yeah? Okay, I mean that happened because of the international sanctions, but it has that kind of capability. So why not in other things? And then the country needs to make firms behave in the right way. I mean, it needs to extract more investment, more R&D, more employment from the firms in the mineral energy complex and other large firms. And in this regard, you need better competition policy. I'm not saying that the purpose of competition policy should be just breaking up the monopolies. It should be coordinated with the rest of industrial policy so that it is used to change the behavior of the firms. And yeah, I think sometimes that you need more explicit political deals, yeah, because sometimes that you cannot change the behavior of these large firms that simply with the fines for this anti-competitive behavior, the rebuke for that kind of failure to report. You need more explicit political deals, yeah. We can talk about that later if you want. Also, the country needs to extract more, the informal concessions from TNCs in terms of technology transfer, local sourcing, worker training. Well, some of these things can be done legally under the WTO, like technology transfer and worker training, but there are restrictions on the local sourcing or local contents in the WTO. So a lot of countries have actually struck informal deals with these enterprises on individual basis. Yeah? Why aren't you doing it? You know? Also, there need to be more forceful policies for indirect employment creation by creating and developing SMEs through various means, investment subsidies, enterprise development advice, public provision or subsidies for R&D, export marketing, trade financing, training, consultancy. These are basically inputs that SMEs need to grow, but that are too expensive to provide on individual basis through the open market. Yeah? So this is why, for example, the success stories of SMEs in certain regions in Italy, like Emilia-Romagna and Friuli, they were based on cooperation between the local enterprise groups, associations of these SMEs with local governments, yeah, to provide some of these inputs. Yeah? The same applies to the industrial policies of many German states. Yeah? And last, not but least, South Africa's trade and industrial policies have not even had the potential influences that they could because of poor coordination with other policies. So these other policies need to change. Yeah? So it has suffered from overly restrictive macroeconomic policy. I mean, the last 3 decades, well, Brazil's changed a bit now, but South Africa and Brazil have had the highest real interest rate in the world. Yeah? And actually, it's a miracle that there is at least some investment in this country, in the real economy, because when you can get 10%, 12%, sometimes 15% real return by investing in government bond, why do you bother to invest in productive enterprises? Yeah? With all the headaches with suppliers, all the labor problems, yeah? All the power outage, actually the people who are doing the business in the real sector in this country and Brazil, they are mad. Yeah? I mean, why do they do it? They must be masochists. Yeah? So with this kind of high interest rate policy, the rand has been hugely overvalued, killing of export, and of course that volatile. And this is why is it not moving to the next page? Can you, yeah, this is the result. Your country has one of the lowest rate of investment in the world. I mean, it's great that you are at least number one in something. No, I'm yes. Sorry to be mean here, but look at this. You are investing only 16.4% of your GDP. When the average for upper middle income countries where you belong is 12 percent point higher, and even the least developed countries are investing more than 8% point more. With an investment rate like this, it's actually a miracle that you have managed to eke out whatever you have been able to eke out. So this is a really serious issue. Oh, sorry. And then you also have to have a new policy towards the financial sector. I know your financial sector is very, very strong, but there's something seriously wrong when you have one of the most developed stock markets in the world, and this stock market is not even financing your corporate investment. I mean, like in the US, like in the UK, US stock market has turned into an ATM for investors. They are actually taking money out of the corporate sector. And there's especially lack of long-term development financing. And in this regard, the role of IDC, I would say, is critical, because it doesn't simply provide long-term development financing, meaning financing with a longer time horizon, 3 years, maybe 5 years, maybe longer, with below market interest rate. But also IDC coordinates related investment and crowding private financing. I mean, on its own, it's small. I mean, it's a tiny unit compared to, for example, the famous BNDES, Bank of the Development Bank of Brazil. But at least it could try to play a more strategic role by coordinating different investments and by the crowding in the private sector finance. And doing all these policies differently, I would argue needs the organizational reform within the government. So there needs to be greater cooperation and coordination among several ministries engaged in trade and industrial policies, trade and industry, economic development, mineral resources, and so on, and related ministries like finance, transport, public works, and so on. And also, I think that you need some unit to coordinate all these efforts. So a kind of more ambitious approach would be to create, reorient and strengthen the National Planning Commission into a true orchestrating body like the French Planning Commission of the 1950s and 60s, or the Korean Economic Planning Board, which between the early 60s and mid 1990s even controlled the budget. So in the Korea at the time, the finance ministry collected the taxes, the planning ministry decided how to spend it. So it was quite an unusual situation, and probably this is being overly ambitious, but at least create some kind of coordinating body, maybe in the presidency, maybe the outside it, more specifically charged with interministerial coordination. Okay, let me finish by saying that I would like to apologize for being a bit rude and direct. Well, that's the Koreans for you. But it was not mainly because I'm a Korean, but because I really feel that this country has so much potential and have not been able to utilize it. And yeah, time's running out. I mean, people have waited for 3 decades, and the results, they are not that great. I mean, how long can you last? How much longer can you? And then, who knows that if the current political coalition cannot hold on to power, what kind of regressive forces might erupt and drive the country back into the 19th century. So I really hope my the rude comments that have at least stimulated you into thinking about some of these. And please don't take anything that I say too seriously. No, I mean, because I don't know enough about your country. I mean, I really do not believe in some foreigner flying in for a few days and telling people what to do. No, that's wrong. But at least I can be a bit about the gadfly, stinging people around, so that they would look in different directions. They would think about things in a different way. And if my talk today have done a bit of that, I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Cheng. Another round of applause, colleagues. I hope this is not a walkout. I'm hoping that they're going to listen online and join us online. Thank you very much. So Professor Cheng apologizes for possibly having been rude. If that was painful, apparently pain serves a very good purpose because it calls attention to that which is not right. So perhaps he's done that sufficiently. We're going to now move on to a third speaker for the day, a colleague who's going to respond to what Professor Cheng has said. The respondent of the day is Dr. Lumkile Mondi, a senior lecturer at the Wits Business School, former chief economist at the IDC and Transnet. He's a director of a number of companies, amongst them VM Automotive, Taylor Rolling Stock, Leasing, Safal Steel, Gemfields, and Sidibelo Resources. Dr. Mondi, over to you. Can we give him a round of applause, please?
Thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Professor Cheng. At the time we first came in South Africa, I was also working behind the different teams that you were mentioning. So I was at WITS, working with Professor John Sander, who was working in the Macroeconomic Research Group with Vela Pillay, who was at the time leading it, Maxi Sulu, Niva Makhetla, and many others. But I was much younger and less wiser than I am today. So I think to respond to you, I'm going to start from your recommendations and then come backward. I don't have a presentation, so I'm gonna do it unprofessionally, but hopefully the points I'm making will resonate with you. So what has been my experience in South Africa, particularly in the post-apartheid period, is really a lack of national interest. So if we're talking about industrial policy, we're talking about a national agenda where as South Africans, we want to develop, we want to catch up, we want to leapfrog. In our space in South Africa, we are rivals here in this house. We don't agree on anything for whatever reasons. So it starts with us that if we're going to create a national developmental agenda, there has to be national interest. And in that regard, the rest is easier, some of the things that you're saying. So let me start with macroeconomic policy. With our investment being at about 16.4%, among the lowest, even as you've shown in your work, even the low middle income countries, or in fact, even the poor countries, we outperform us. And that talks to the first point I mentioned, that those of us who are privileged, who have said, like me, I've sat across, I've been in government, I'm in business as a director, and I teach. So I've seen it all. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly. So I use that experience to reflect on why there is low rate of investment in South Africa. The fact that we've got a very dominant political party, the African National Congress, one would have expected that the ANC will be signaling to business and society a long-term agenda. So we have stops and starts every post-election. So that signaling is important for us in business, because then it tells us that the path or investment that we're going to be putting in our operation will have a payoff date. So we prepare to spend money in the next 5 years, investing in machinery, investing in capability and training, because you know that our government has got a long-term horizon. Therefore, over years, our investment will start paying back. So in that absence, many businesses and many of us, we all planning in darkness, because we don't know what's going to happen in May, between May and July 2024, who's going to come in. So therefore, you've got to protect what you have. So this is the macroeconomic environment that partly explains the low investment rate of South Africa. Is that lack of a long-term development agenda with different interests within the political leadership of the African National Congress, and therefore making all of us, even households, to be extremely conservative in how we plan going forward. Again, around macroeconomic policy, a key issue that we all know in South Africa was the loss politically of the debate. I don't think that debate has been won. I think that debate was lost in the transition. I mean, Vishnu Padayachhi, together with Van Niekerk, go to lens around this issue of macroeconomic policy and how the ANC was preoccupied with political power and allowed the clauses in relation to the South African Reserve Bank to pass through without them engaging on them. And so that foundation around the macroeconomic constraint that you talk about is an outcome and a continuation even now within the ANC, where we know that there is a resolution passed at Nasrec that talked to what needed to be done and is then simply kicked to touch. So therefore, what I want to reinforce to you and argue to you is that actually the macroeconomic policy agenda in South Africa is a political and a policy choice. So we cannot point to the Washington guys, point to neoliberals external. It is politically an acceptable policy instrument by the governing party who have had opportunity. Even under Mbeki, when Mbeki got about 69% of the vote, there is so much, if we're committed to that agenda of inclusivity, African development, there is so much that could have been done. So I just thought that, the macroeconomic policy debate, I hear it all the time. And as you can hear from me, in South Africa, I've thrown a towel because I think it's a political choice. So we can shout, we can advise, but if politically people are comfortable with the choices that were cut in the transition, and despite the conferences telling them what to do, and they continue doing as they wish, who am I to engage in that debate? So most of us will watch the debate continuing. So keep on arguing and agitating. Maybe we'll succeed around that. And then the second issue, again, because I'm commenting from backward, relate to the cooperation and coordination, as well as organizational reforms. So this is very, very important because, again, as people argue, that to get the government what we deserve. So there's a clip, I'm sure many of you might have seen it if you are on X, that was doing rounds in the past 72 hours. It's a clip of Comrade Nelson Mandela, I think was speaking in Mafike. He's talking about the process of election, an appointment into the cabinet. So Mandela is consulting among his comrades, and the list is drafted about who is going to be in the cabinet. And he says, this list of ours was more about credibility, that everyone who's in this list knows the position, or at least the area where he or she is being deployed, or they. So therefore, there is a conscious thought process that's going through Mandela, that what, these men, women, and they are the ones that are going to create an inclusive and developing economy. So he says, he's sharing this, and then he goes to the South African Communist Party. I think Raymond Sadner is the guy that's referred. Raymond Sadner is a full academic and is now working alone as a researcher. And Raymond Sadner kicked the whole thing trash, said, no ways, these guys, no ways, you come to them there. But they said, no, it's my decision. It's not your decision. Then it goes on to COSATU and get the same response. So the issue, Professor Chan, in relation to cooperation and coordination, starts within at least political level within the cabinet. Of course, the assumption is that you'll have gone through the African National Congress conferences, and therefore the cadres of the movement will be the one that are supposed to be implementing whatever program it is. So therefore, it's a national program. So there should be no issue about what Minister Mandashe in Mineral Resources and Energy and Minister Patel challenge and competition in relation to industrial policy to be talking about. It doesn't happen that way in South Africa. More importantly, even the very same president sits by and watches. If he doesn't watch, he creates a new ministry for the Ministry of Electricity, for the Ministry of Energy. So I'm just saying to you that there is political economic constraint in relation to quite a lot of the macroeconomic policies, the cooperation and coordination economic reforms, which for South Africa are a huge burden for us, because they are the ones, arguably, that have put South Africa to the position where it finds itself today. It's less to do with the other stuff. It's more to do with us. What we do with the power that we inherited in 1994. And I think we just don't know what to do. And we struggle about how we can create an inclusive economy going forward. So let me go back then to the earlier slides that you talked to. We shouldn't forget that our economy was built on an agenda to create inclusivity. Many of us who have read the economic history of our country will know that the 1904 settlement that led to the Union and ushered the two provinces of South Africa, the Boer republics of the Free State and the Transvaal, and the English provinces of Natal and the Cape province were compromised. The compromise between the Boere and the English at the time. Despite our participation in the South African War, basically the Afrikaner completely forgot about our role, and many of our forefathers who died in the concentration camp under the English concentration camps. So I think this is very important. So the agenda for inclusivity has been witnessed in our country because that agreement reverses all the gains that Black South Africans had that process. So you guys are familiar with all the taxes that were introduced, so that the chicken tax, the cattle tax, etc., which are introduced to prioritise Black South Africans, and in doing so, get worse in the Red Watersrand, about 45 kilometers south, where gold is discovered, where the Rand Rebellion, with the support of the Communist Party of South Africa, CPSA, driven by a lot of the comrades, Jewish comrades that had come from Russia, Latvia, as well as Lithuania, amongst others, who were driving a revolutionary agenda, seeing Black South Africans living more comfortable than the Boere, and therefore siding with the Boere to instigate a strike, the Rand Rebellion, which in fact led to a lot of the gains being lost by Black miners and Black South Africans in general. Many of you are familiar. This is when this is the period of ensuring that slowly, certain occupations cannot be occupied by Black South Africans, and Black South Africans cannot be called workers. So it's a huge victory for the CPSA in this process, leading to, of course, to the evolution of how then, once you've done that, how do you create an inclusive agenda? Many of you might have come across a Carnegie report, which was done in 1935, indicating that over 35,000 Boere during that period were poor, poorer than us. There wasn't a deeper level of poverty in that period in comparison to what we have today. So what I'm saying to you, the point I'm trying to put across is the point around the unemployment that we're talking about and how inclusion historically was done, and whether is there anything that you can get from that with the report. So let me move this argument around inclusion, that in the inclusion process, there is a vision led by SMARTS. So SMARTS agenda is economic inclusion, and economic inclusion that's informed by extracting rents from the white miners. Because remember, the English are controlling the mining sector and the financial services sector. So where are the Boere gonna play a role? And this is that through the development of the SOEs that you all know about, starting with Eskom moving to a steelmaking company not far away from here, AISCO, the Easter Corporation, or ISCO, or today is actually Metal, it's a multinational. And then going on to say, how we're going to develop without a long-term financing institution? The starting of the IDC, as we're talking about, that IDC's agenda is long-termism. You invest now to create a long-term agenda. But this project, interestingly, this project is not well accepted within the Afrikaner community. So in the Western Cape, what you call today Afrikaners have already created an identity called Afrikaner. Here in the Transvaal, there's a Boere, and the Boere, because of the generals, had controlled the levels of power up to 1924 PAC government. So with Jan Smuts being preoccupied with the British and his popularity within the British, particularly his relationship with Churchill, clouds his own vision. And he sends South Africa to fight in the Second World War. And in that fight in the Second World War, participation in the Second World War, is extremely unpopular, particularly in the Western Cape, in the emerging Afrikaner identity. And in 1948, for the new regime that you all know, that are familiar with, and that regime institute what you call today the apartheid project. That's where I want to go, because that's where the manufacturing value added expands extensively. So what is this apartheid project? So this apartheid project starts with identity. So you first create a notion that South Africa is a nation of different ethnicities. So we've got Basutus, we've got the Xhosas, Maxhosa, the Xhosa, they call the Xhosas. With the Xhosas, we've got Shangaan, etc., etc. But also we've got Afrikaners. So these Afrikaners are South African. And in doing so, being diverse, we therefore need to develop separately and independently. So the apartheid project itself is what you are talking about, that, we've inherited this special geography where Black townships have got no infrastructure, they've got all the challenges that I've highlighted. And this is done as a strategy of building an inclusive economy. So they cut the cake for themselves. What is important about this period is how strategic it was for the African, and more importantly, the international political environment. Because I think a lot of our challenges also, we shall conclude with it, relates to the international political economic environment, or the geopolitics, as you guys call it. So this period is the period where Hitler has just been defeated. And there is a war, there is a Cold War that's emerging. And at the back of it is the atomic bomb development. Who is going to develop quickly, and what then happens? And arguably, one of the ways, that carried the apartheid project was the deal that the Afrikaners cut with the international community. So you are talking as part of recommendation that, guys, be ready to do political deals. So this is one of the best political deals that was done by the Afrikaners in relation to uranium, because that time we had gold, and uranium is part of the rock of our gold. So we had huge uranium reserves. And that basically, many of you might have seen the movie called Oppenheimer. If you have seen it, when I watched it, it just reminded me of this period I'm talking about. Because so this period basically puts South Africa at the center of what you call technopolitics. And therefore, what it does, that it allows you to learn. As you learn, you gain knowledge. As you gain knowledge, you become capable. So this technopolitics becomes extremely beneficial for us, for South Africa, and the apartheid project. So they use that also, given that the numbers are so small. I mean, talking about 4.5% of the population, the white population of Africa, and the rest is Black South Africans. So many of them might argue, being so many, why did it take us so long to defeat the racist apartheid regime? So let me tell you. So having access to technopolitics allow them to have access to the technologies. So the international business machine becomes quite a critical partner to the apartheid regime. Remember, they have those days, they've got these big machines for storage, free data. So basically, you identify all the Black people. So you go through a process. When you're 16 and over, we give you a Tompas. Tompas allows us to take all the fingerprints and all the things that talk about how our parents were immunized through the process. Many of you might have seen that building that burned down recently in the inner city of Joburg, which was part of that machinery of creating that. So Professor Chang, this is very important, because what it does basically is that it allows then the African to have these technologies access, these capabilities. They didn't invent them. Politically, they were able to execute and extract benefits from the international community. Even when Blacks resist against this identity, and going to ban the past since 1961. They basically said, we'll give you a middle finger. We're going to go it alone. And they're going it alone. And in going it alone allows them to bring in, under Foster now, a military industrial complex. So the Minister of Defense is Peter Willem Botha. Peter Willem Botha is preoccupied with security. That we've seen how these Bantus, as blacks are called, are going to mess us up. We saw in 1961, there were a few of them, they caused havoc to us. So now they've gone underground, they've got military capabilities because basically the apartheid regime crushed all the movements. And in doing so, people went underground, others went overseas, but the regime felt insecure that there could be an insurrection. So what do? You build what you're talking about in relation to the US, a military industrial complex. So I'm saying, I'm sharing these stories because I'm trying to go to the manufacturing value add of the past, because it's very important for us to capture it in these historical processes that I'm trying to highlight. That these high values of high manufacturing value added, is an outcome of this military industrial complex. So Amsco here, Daniel, and many others, those of you who come from Tembisa, you will have come across with the military industrial complex. It was full here, all Isando, all the way to the Tambo airport. Those of us who were in the struggle in the 70s and 80s know very, very well about that complex and the production of tear gas over the period. All these areas, they were clustered, all of them around here, because it was nearer to Amsco, but also across the freeway. There is the military hospital, and there is ISCO, Eastern Corporation. What ISCO does, make steel for weapons, steel for guns and other machines. So this is what explains these high levels of manufacturing. So what the argument here I'm putting across, just to conclude, I don't want to occupy too long, is that the history of exclusion, or if African of inclusion, by 1973 creates a huge wide middle class. And South Africa is unable to go for fabrication, so to go down the value chain. So they can't fabricate, because in that definition, their population and their economy is about the 4.5% people. The exclusion of 95% impoverishes the Black community. So they can't afford the high value products at all. So in that process, therefore, you've got no market. If you've got to go and fabricate, you've got no market to sell the product. So this economy is stuck because it doesn't have the market. So then what happens? So what happens basically with the liberation across the Nkomati of Mozambique and the liberation across the Pompo of Zimbabwe, and later the participation of South Africa in the Angolan War and the occupation of Namibia, is that basically predominantly manufacturing sector is a war economy. It is driven by suppressing resistance in the township and suppressing and fighting guerrilla movements across. And it's a partnership between the state and many of these firms I talk about, the cluster firms, the Anglo-American firms that were making bombs, etc., in a historical perspective. So what I'm saying basically is that perhaps in the South African case, when it relates to industrial policy and manufacturing role, we need to think hard and think deeply. These now my final comments. Firstly, in relation to the inclusion of Black people, there is no doubt that the transport infrastructure is the most critical and pivotal pillar of inclusion. What it allows us, as you have argued, Professor Chang, it allows us to transition quickly. So because the biggest polluter outside our energy generation is the transport sector. Remember, if you've got a failing railway infrastructure, you don't have much. So you've got cars, you've got these diesel trucks that go everywhere. Now you've got the scooters that are going everywhere. So the pollution in South Africa is enormous. And the cost of transport for Black South Africans is huge. Black South Africans don't see their families at all. So if you live in Brakpan, you've got a family in Naledi. In the past, you could be able to go on a weekend. Today, you've got to cash up at 4 taxes. So it's going to cost you to go there about 400 rands. It's even above the 350 that you pay for the unemployed in a monthly basis. So what I'm saying is that I agree with you that the transportation investment in transportation is critical because it can create an inclusive society very quickly. We make true railways. We make it easier for everyone to travel from point A to point B, to see their families, spend more time with their families, and really to start creating communities that can thrive, that can have solidarity. At the moment, it's difficult because you have to plan, if you're a poor family, it's a short distance between Brakpan and Naledi. The second area that I think you touch upon, again, it's a very sad story, having worked for Industrial Development Corporation, because we had worked on the green transition in 2011. So there's a document that many of you might have seen on how South Africa can integrate in different industries in the green economy. It was written by us in partnership, us being IDC and the DBSA in 2011. It was launched by Minister Patel. And unfortunately, because again of the absence of coordination and ambition, national interest, it gathered dust somewhere else. So what I'm saying is that the things that you're telling us are what we already know, that we have to build. I mean, we put so much money. Some of you might have heard about this experience. We put a lot of money as the IDC now in blades manufacturing, because we just felt that, the technology, we didn't have the technology of the turbines. So we're talking to Norwegians around them, giving us at least allowing us as a value add to do the easier work. And then hopefully over time, as the government signals an investment in cleaner energy, there'll be transfer of technology. So even there, the central government dropped the ball. We now have got stage 3. We probably, if we're done what's supposed to have done then, we'll be having so much electricity. And again, the long-term investment will be coming in, because we know we're not fairing that. So I'm just giving you an insider and also a realistic perspective. Just finally, because I don't want to, I've been talking too long. Finally, I think, given how much money and resources South Africa has, it is a shame for South Africa to find itself with 32.5% unemployment. It is a shame to have our port infrastructure, our rail infrastructure, our infrastructure falling apart. It is a shame to see the city of Tshwane, the city of Johannesburg, the city of eThekwini, and many others being in tatters. There is money. There is capability. Why? Why? Where is national interest? So my argument is that in the absence of South Africans, all of us here, betting for the same team, we can invite Professor Hajung Chan and others on the other side of the debate, like Ricardo Hausmann, etc. they'll tell us their story. But you listen, because I mean, what Professor Chang is saying, you've been telling us for a long time, I'm sorry, Professor Chang. And so we do nothing. We do nothing because amongst all of us, we've lost national interest. So development, economic development is about national interest. It's about me as a South African, putting other South Africans first, not me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Monde. I see the flame hasn't lowered, not at all, not at all. I wasn't going to disclose this, but yeah, I have now. So colleagues, let's move to section 4. We're running a little bit behind time, but I'm still hoping that we will recover our time. We are now at a Q&A stage. So it's your opportunity to ask questions. I'm hoping that the colleagues on the IT desk, they will help me with those who are online, who would like to ask questions. But in the room here, any comments, questions? I don't know you by name, so if I use other descriptors, please pardon me. The gentleman at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Wandi Lengmele. I come from a private sector. I wanted to just ask a question about balancing the ecological sustainability and economic and social sustainability. Because I think we are beginning to pick up very worrying trends. If I may just use the UK government, because the delegation is from SOAS, not too far from 10 Downing Street. The UK government has gone back to deep sea exploration. The balancing act between ecological sustainability and the interest, the national interest, perhaps that Dr. Monde was talking about, when it comes to economic growth, is becoming quite contested. And these are very worrying examples because they relate to our own scenario here. We have a tremendous fossil fuel capability to grow this economy. But we've committed as well to a just transition. We've ratified the Kyoto Protocol, we've ratified Paris Protocol. And in fact, if you look at the US, which has refused to ratify these protocols, when I saw the presentation about the exit strategy from coal, I think we need to have a slightly deeper conversation, slightly uncomfortable conversation, because part of it could be R&D into technologies that could be looking at carbon sequestration and capture, for instance. Because this industry for us is not just an industry which is about CO2 emission. It's a question of national security. So I thought maybe let me just pose this to Professor Chang to say, how do we strike this very critical balance? And we're going through some of the challenges now because of the commitments that we've made. But is it really, from where we stand as South Africans, an industry that we could say we must exit? And in fact, we're exporting quite a lot to other economies, by the way. So how do we deal with this very interesting paradox from our perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wandile. And you reminded me I need to set the house rules. So if you do raise your hand, please introduce yourself and what you do. And then please keep the questions sharp and precise so that we can get a whole lot more in. We're going to take a round of 5 questions and then allow our panel to respond, and then we'll take another round. If there is none in the house, I have a few online, but let's try and finish as ZK Matthews. So I'll come this way. I saw your hands this side, but can I just observe the Honorable Minister this side and give him an opportunity? Minister Zigalala.
No, thanks. I think there has been good presentation by both And I will shoot straight to the question. My question is around tariffs as an instrument to enhance industrialization. How has been the effect of export tax toward enhancing industrialization, especially in countries that have that are rich in minerals? That is my first question. What then I maybe to Dr. Mondi in particular, beside the issues you raised, there was a proposal around the establishment of a dedicated commission on industrialization. And what would be your take on that? Because we do have a national development, a national planning commission, but what could be a strategic platform that could enhance implementation? I get the point about the national interest, and I do concur with you, but we may need to look on a platform that will help us to ensure that we industrialize more.
Thank you, Minister. Colleague, this side of the pillar.
Thank you very much. My name is Bongani Maimele. I work here at the National School of Government. Thank you for the presentation, the masterclass by Prof. Your topic, I saw it first because we're part of those organized the masterclass. At the crossroad, as you presented, actually, it is explicit that we are at the crossroad as a country. And when you presented, it reminded me of President Mbeki when he was then deputy president. So South Africa is a country of two nations, one rich, one poor, the rich one being white and the other one being black, a nation of two extreme inequalities. But Prof, when we look at this thing of structural transformation, it is happening in an environment that is highly contested. And in my view, it is in the interest of others to keep the global south, as underdeveloped, because that inequality in global governance, that existence of poverty and inequality feeds into the perpetuation of global power by those who want to cling onto global power. Structural transformation, Prof, needs to be accompanied also in South Africa and most African countries with special transformation in order to integrate areas that were previously or still currently especially marginalized from economic opportunities. And then another thing that is happening again, which is a result of global power, we committed to end poverty by the year 2030, the world, so to speak, committed to end poverty, which requires this structural something you're talking about. However, few years before we're about to achieve or to make progress towards the goal of eradicating poverty, we shift priorities to the green goals and move away from the brown goals. Now, suddenly we have competing priorities between the pursuit of poverty eradication, the pursuit of universal healthcare, education, and etc. And now suddenly we have to shift into the green aspects of the development with limited budgets. Then now countries, because they have to confine within this system of global governance that forces them to say it's either you conform or we punish you. Now you have to shift resources to pursue green goals. And when you look at the countries that support to provide this green technology are the Western countries, then you remain indebted to them because you have to purchase from them these technologies and the skills transfer. So another thing that you mentioned,
No,
Prof,
thank you, Bongane. Thank you very much. Please take a seat. There are a number of hands and a number of questions. Thank you so much. You'll get an opportunity to pursue these ones. Ma'am, is that Portia? Yeah. Oh, yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Prof. Chang. I've been in this government literally since the early 90s, so virtually nothing that you say I disagree with. I am as puzzled as you are at the fact that we've not done everything that you've listed, because we've listed everything that you've listed that we should be doing as well. So maybe Lungile might be able to help me. But the only question that I wanted to ask is, I'm always puzzled is that in South Africa, whenever we talk about the economy, nobody goes to tax policy. So I've been saying to Black people, we better get into the tax space, because when you look at our tax policy, it's actually anti-jobs. You have accelerated depreciation for equipment. There's nothing that encourages you to create jobs. We have a skills levy, which you really think about it, it's a tax on the number of employees that you have. So I do think, it would be quite useful that in these exercises, we might actually democratize tax policy and not make it difficult maths, because that's what it ends up looking like. It's difficult mathematics. And yet, actually, ultimately, in the end, because where does the government get its money from? Via taxation. If your tax system is inherently non-progressive, you're going to end up with the ongoing situation of unemployment. As for the rest, I would 1000% agree with you that if we were serious about creating jobs, we would pay serious attention to manufacturing.
Thank you. Didn't introduce yourself? Just as the mic goes.
Portia Darby. I am a former civil servant doing gardening leave at present.
There was one other hand I'd seen this side. There you go, ma'am. Towards exactly that row you are on. Then I'm going to go through a few questions that have been posted on the chat function, and then allow our panelists to respond.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sibusiso Ndlovu. I work here at the NSG. So my question is to the speakers, especially Dr. Mondi, someone who's got a history about South African economy. I want to get your take on this sudden interest. Maybe it's not sudden, but this interest of public-private partnership, especially in our state-owned enterprises. What's your take on this interest, especially to our economic growth? I mean, having private investment in our energy, which is ESCOM, transport, plus in our ports. What's your take? What's your take on this thing in to our economic growth? What does it relate to? What impact is it going to have in our job creation? Just what's your take?
All right. Thank you very much, Sibusiso. There are a few other questions that were online, if you just note them, unless you're able to screen them. You couldn't. Okay, so let me just go through them. Alvin Khabia, ask Alvin Khabia or Rapia, former colleague, can you explain what you mean by explicit political deals? I think that's to you, Prof. Cheng. And then Anthony Julius says, great talk, Prof. What would be the best approach to prioritize and sequence all the suggested evidence-informed advice for sustainable structural transformation in South Africa? Yeah, it's the whole talk again, that one, but I'm sure you'll be able to take the key takeaways there. Anthony Julius has also a question for Professor Mondi. Being a constitutional democracy, not parliamentary like the UK, have our courts not failed our citizens to facilitate state action to advance socio-economic transformation in SA between 1994 and now? And the final one is from Marcia Korston. Thank you for the insights. In addition to coordination, what are other skills and capabilities to prioritize in the public sector for sustainable structural transformation? What is your perspective on coordination and role of regional and local government, e.g. cities, for structures of coordination? So those are the 5 from the chat function. For now, we will take more. Yeah, I think we've got about 10. And then Prof. Chang will close for us.
Let me respond to Wandile. So Wandile, the endowment that we have on our oceans that hasn't been exploited is huge. So again, in the absence of national interest, it weakens our capability to extract compromises because our national interest is not well articulated as a government. We speak in tongues, to use a biblical notion. So until we are very clear as a nation how we're gonna be creating an inclusive economy, we're gonna have these obstacles with this tension in relation to endowment, because we know that we've got lots of gas. That's why in the upcoming RP, we're supposed to have come out by now, but hopefully it's gonna come up in the first quarter next year. You'll see gas will be a bigger part of our transition because it emits but far less than coal. And so I think that discussion we're gonna have. But secondly, there is a lot of work that's being done. My colleague, Dr. Andy Malumbazo, and others within our national system of innovation, they're working on extracting critical raw materials from coal. So initial work has shown us that in coal, there's niobium and other critical minerals that we can extract from our coal. The question where economists are going to come in is whether can they be extracted and exploited economically. So that's where we're going to go. But the scientists, through Sanedi, our colleagues next door at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, have given the money to do that. So a lot of work going there. We're hoping that in about, by next year, end up this time next year, we'll have some promising results because we've spread that work to Limpopo is doing the Limpopo coal, and Northwest is doing the Northwest coal, UKZN is doing the Newcastle, Pit Retrieve, Fried, etc. coal. So it's quite exciting work that's being done across. And of course, Fort Hare is doing the Northeastern Cape, and Roma, University of Lesotho, is doing the Lesotho coal. It's quite exciting work that's being done, and we hope that will happen. Of course, all of you will know also that South Africa dropped the ball in relation to coal bed methane. We've got a demonstration plant here in Mpumalanga of Eskom. It's produced about 4 megawatts, so it's not that huge, but it's proven. But you have to scale it up. So again, I'm arguing that when there's national interest, we don't have to throw money into this. Joule, remember, many of you know about Joule, how we put a lot of money at the IDC at the time, and again, it was dropped. So that national interest and national economic development is key in your ambition. With links to Minister Zigalala. Minister Zigalala, it's very interesting that you're raising the issue of the Commission of Industrialization because that's how the apartheid regime worked. So if they don't have a plan, they start a commission. So many of you remember, those of you who are my age, will remember that after 1976, with all the stayaways that we are forcing our parents not to go to work, threatening them as well, many of you might have heard your parents talking about it. What emerged out of that was a commission, the Vihan Commission, Pindi, remember? And then there was the Janssen Commission, and then there's the De Villiers Commission. So our government, it's interesting that nationalist movement, like National Party and our African National Congress, they're all the same. They don't want to make hard decisions. They set up commissions, which decisions that they can make themselves. The commission just make decision, have they deploy the right people and get it done. So that's more of my feedback to you around that. So I'm sorry, the other point that talks to the global agenda, I think there is a constraint that we face in terms of creating coalitions. So many of you might have come across one of your colleagues coming from SOAS, Khan. Khan has written extensively, colleagues, around political settlement. So Khan's take around this issue between the global north and global south will be about a political settlement. Is there an opportunity for us, given the desperation around the green transition, can we use that as an instrument to extract other benefits in relation to issues of market access and other issues? So those strategic issues require a different type of leadership. Leadership, again, that's driven by national interest. So for me, I'm caught up in this national interest because I think in the absence of the leaders that can really carry their own people, you just on your own. As Biko said, just we're on our own. We have to try and see how you navigate. We need that leader that's going to say, you know what, we've got a history of marginalization. We've got millions of South Africans unemployed. This is the path we're going to take. It's going to take pain, South Africans, but this is where we're going. We need that type of leadership that can come in. And the tax issue, Hosha, is again a national interest issue. So the Scandinavians were very clear around their own challenges. That, if you're going to build a better society, a new political settlement is important. So labor, society, the bourgeoisie, capital, have to agree on the new path. So in our case, I would argue that if, again, we're underpinned by that national interest, taking taxes high as 60 wouldn't be an issue. I don't care. For me, it's not about money. It is about development and seeing everyone moving forward. If we had that, but that requires that unity of peoples, that we all know where we're going as a nation. We're proudly South African. When I move everyone out of these harsh conditions that they're in. So therefore, the tax issue for me is neither here nor there in the absence of a government that's committed to inclusivity and long-term development of its own people. So I will kick it to the learned professor next to me. Sibusiso, unfortunately, Baba, if you cannot do, what do you do? So this is an admission. So I'm arguing now. Minister can come back on this one. My argument is that there is a realization from our government that the collapse of key SOEs has to do with our inability to do. So therefore, if you cannot do, and we have others that can do, we can somewhere ask, can you guys help us, please? So this is a call without admitting publicly that, we've got weaknesses in our systems. And I believe that this school here, the principal here is here to do that, to help us strengthen and build capabilities, and then can proudly push a national agenda going forward. So we've got a big task ahead. So I think it's not. I don't think I'll argue that it's not an ideological issue. I think government wants to get things done, and they understand that we're limited. So let's bring private sector into the space. I could be wrong. I'm sure there are better views here. And then finally, in relation to me, is the question by Anthony about our courts. So it's very fascinating because Professor Chan, one thing I didn't talk about was the rents. And in South Africa, we have now accepted that rents are part of our economy. So if you're talking about Black economic empowerment, that is rents extraction. So here's the paradox about South Africa. So you've set up this national infrastructure called broad-based Black economic empowerment, which I'm arguing that is rents extraction. However, the rents are going to a few. So what you're doing is that you're taking away what should be benefiting society, and they're benefiting the Lumkile Mondis of this world, and a few who, in fact, Professor Chang, enjoy much better lifestyle than the people are talking about. So you're talking about, Professor Chang talk about how the racist Afrikaner beneficiaries were living, you see them in the beach and everywhere else. You have to look at the new Black elite. It's something else. It is something else. Everything important, from a bag to a makeup to what they drink. So my argument here around this issue is that actually the machinery itself is constrained. So therefore, our courts have got a huge responsibility to ensure that there's equality. Whether it's the Kampebe decision and many others that talk to humanizing Black people, our courts have been far ahead around that. Where we're weak, arguably, Anthony, who's listening online, is the parliamentary machinery that the cadres deployed leave a lot to be desired because they've got a power. So let's make one example. Professor Chang, given that you got rents, sorry, repeating this last point, given that you got rents in our economy, and some of the rents are harming our society, and with a commission that you set up at Dr. Zigalala, that came with some recommendation. Sorry, Minister. So that commission, you'll expect that the parliamentarians, when Minister Kodongwana present the budget, they'll give more money to the National Prosecuting Authority, to the courts and everything else, so that they're able to do their work. No, Chair. Thank you.
Clearly, there's not enough time, but a number of challenging, no problem, a number of challenging questions that we need to confront as this cohort of public servants. And I think because Dr. Mond is not so far away, Principal, I think we should bring him back for another provocative session. But to get us to move the country forward, it's the first 30 years. Let's see what the next 30 years would look like. I'm going to hand over to Professor Chang, who's going to respond to those questions and pass his final remarks as well. As I said, but so only time is against us, nothing else. Prof.
Thank you for all the great comments and questions, especially Professor Mondi. Yeah, I agree with you that without understanding politics, political economy, political settlement, whatever you may call it, you cannot really change the society. And yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go that far, but you basically put these words into my mouth. Basically, the failure of the Black elite during the post-apartheid period to lift the rest of the Black community up. So yeah, you have to kind of confront that. Now, in thinking about that, I think I mean, I had known it only vaguely, but you're kind of very kind of clear kind of the analysis of the political arc of this country since the end of the Boer War, as at least they call it in England, was very, very instructive. And yeah, I mean, I think that basically you need to strike another political deal because what happened, as far as I can see it from my kind of fragmentary experiences in the last 30 years, I mean, basically the white elite cleared one corner of their table and invited a few black guys, thereby creating what some people call a cappuccino society. So brown at the bottom, white froth, and a few sprinkles of cocoa at the top. I mean, maybe it was necessary in the beginning to have that kind of arrangement to prevent political explosion. But I think, frankly, I think that I don't want to blame individuals, but the initial leaders of post-apartheid South Africa, they were too soft, because they could have extracted a lot more concessions in a way that creates a more inclusive and prosperous society. But this was not done. I mean, I don't want to go into politics itself, since I don't know enough about it. But now I don't think there's any excuse. I mean, you settle the political situation. Probably it should have been done 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I don't think there's any more excuse for that kind of political settlement anymore. So that you need to come up with a new one. And yeah, that kind of links with this question from the internet audience about what do I mean by explicit political deals. And actually, Professor Mondi has already alluded to it by talking about this Scandinavian example. And if I go a bit more concrete, Sweden, by kind of any standard, is one of the most egalitarian societies in the world. But once again, this is why I keep saying that life is stranger than fiction. Yeah? It's a country with the highest level of concentration of corporate power in the world. Yeah? There's one family called Wallenberg family, spelled Wallenberg, but apparently in Swedish is called the Red Wallenberg, that controls, owns a controlling stake, which, depending on the exact situation of the corporation in question, could account for as little as 20%, possibly up to 40% of the shares. This family has controlling stake in the companies whose collective marketization in the Stockholm Stock Exchange account for 35% of the whole exchange. Yeah? At one point, it was 45%. Yeah? So how did they build this egalitarian society with one family basically owning at least 1/3, at some point, half of the corporate sector? Yeah? So that was the deal that was struck, yeah? Because this family basically agreed to pay very high taxes and donate most of their profit to foundations. They have it's like 6 generation corporate family, and they have like 20 plus foundations, each devoted to different things, scientific research, youth development and whatnot. And they give away like 85% of the profit to these foundations. At the moment, it's controlled by these 3 6th generation guys who are joint chairmen, and their individual wealth are estimated to be like between 10 and 15 million US dollars. Eh? I mean, they don't even make it into the top 100 the rich people list in Sweden. Yeah. I mean, I bet there are like 200 South Africans who are richer than those guys. Yeah? But this family, in return for giving the various arrangements, including differential the voting shares and so on, to retain control over this corporate empire, have agreed to high taxes, accepting trade unions, working with them, behaving in this very austere way at personal level. That was the deal. I mean, it wasn't like, in, I don't know, 1937, they all sat in the same room and signed something. But over time, this kind of political deal was built, which enabled Sweden to have the highest level of corporate concentration and still be an egalitarian society. So can you do something like that? Yeah. I mean, we need to know the history and the political economy and the fine grains of politics in the country to suggest anything concrete. Yeah? So I'm not going to do that, but you can do it. You have to do it. Yeah? I mean, Singapore is another example. Yeah? I mean, on the one hand, it was pursuing free trade policy because they said we were built as a trading port by the British. We are not going to throw away that advantage. So we'll keep on the free trade policy, but that meant that they couldn't raise the local enterprises. So they decided to invite foreign companies to come and make things there. And then after a while, they realized, look, this way we don't own any part of our economy. So they started setting up all these enterprises, state-owned enterprises in semiconductors and steel and cement and port and what have you. Also, despite being very capitalistic, they acknowledge that in a tiny city state, you cannot have political peace without solving the housing problem. Yeah? So when Singapore went independent from the Malay Union, about 50% of the land was already owned by the state, but over the next 60, 70 years, it kept buying land. Yeah? So there's no the explicit confiscation, but it kept buying land to the point that nearly 90% of land is owned by the government. Yeah? And the government also uses land as a tool of industrial policy, because when they want to attract firms that they really want to work with, they offer very cheap rent. Yeah? And give them good location. Yeah? So this is how countries in the real world change. Yeah? They do unusual things. Yeah? They do things that which fit their history, fit their long-term goal, fit their politics, without regard to which textbook says what, without regard to which the famous economists have recommended this or that. Yeah. So once again, I'm not able to suggest any content of the political deals that you need to strike, but you have to strike a new political deal, yeah, with the broader Black community and other non-white people, yeah, with the white economic elite, yeah, with the new Black elite, yeah, because otherwise this country will, I mean, it has been for the last 70 years been on a declining line, yeah. I mean, you cannot continue like this, yeah. Okay, and then the various people asked whether this the issue of the ecological sustainability is hampering the ability of South Africa to deal with more immediate problems. Yeah, on that, first of all, the Tokyo Protocol, Paris Agreement, all of these talk about common but differential responsibilities. Yeah? So developing countries are actually not required to do as much as the rich countries. Yeah. And yeah, what South Africa does may make a little bit of difference, but when it comes to other poorer developing countries, it really doesn't matter what they do. Yeah? So these countries should do whatever they need to do to grow and create jobs and reduce poverty. Having said that, in the bargain is also commitment from the rich countries to facilitate the climate transition for developing countries, which they are not keeping. Yeah? In addition to the fact that the commitment is very minimal, yeah? There's no real recognition of the need for climate reparation, yeah? Even more obvious loss and damage that is like evaded, yeah. I mean, and whatever they are going to give you is little in sum, but very little in terms of technology transfer and creation of real abilities for these countries to generate the future technologies for climate transition. So, yeah, basically keeping the existing the global division of labor. So yes, I mean, we need to speak against that. But having said that, I pointed out that there are windows of opportunity being opened up by this the need for climate transition. Yeah? So take advantage of them. Yeah, and also what I'm recommending is to have a long-term transition strategy. You know? I mean, today's reality, I mean, you have to use coal, you have to keep polluting, yeah, for a while, but what is the problem is that now you have this dichotomous positions, yeah. So one group says we have to grow and pollute and do whatever we need to, yeah. The other says we cannot do that, yeah. No, I mean while you are doing that, you should keep trying to reduce your carbon emission, trying to invest in renewable energy, trying to invest in generating technologies for renewable energy and other green industries. Yeah? So today you might be, I don't know, going 100% brown and polluting and so on, but in 5 years' time, this should be 75% or 85% rather than 100, and then over time you need to change this. Minister Sikalala, yeah, well, the tariff actually, export tax is also known as export tariff. So there are import tariffs and export tariffs, and countries have used this to encourage processing of local raw materials. The best example is Britain in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, when it was actually a raw material producer. At the time, the high-tech industry of Europe was woolen manufacturing, turning sheep's wool into clothes. And the center of those manufacturing was in what are known as the Low Countries, what were known as Low Countries, namely the Netherlands and Belgium, especially Flanders in Belgium. And Britain was just supplying raw materials to these countries. So it was a very kind of developing country at the time. So a lot of British kings and prime ministers that imposed export taxes to encourage processing of wool at home. But that tax alone is not enough. Because what you need is also to provide all these other supports to develop those industries. You need appropriate infrastructure, skills, R&D. So if you are imposing taxes on, say, nickel to promote electrolysis manufacturing, it will have some impact, but having just export taxes is not enough. If you are really serious about developing that sector, you need to provide all these other things. And that requires a strategy. You cannot impose export tax on everything. And you sometimes may actually impose export tax on some things that simply for fiscal reasons. But if it's for long-term developmental reasons, you need a coherent long-term strategy to use that export tax to really develop a new industry. Tax policy, yes. I mean, I don't know much about the tax policy in this country, but yeah, when you are looking at taxes or anything else, really you need to think about the second round effects. So sometimes a tax might actually encourage investment in capital intensive industry, like accelerated the depreciation allowance. But in the long run, that industry might create a lot of other industries that create jobs. So, you need to walk through this second round, third round effects, rather than simply saying that, well, anything that promotes capital intensive industries that are bad for jobs. It often is, but it isn't necessarily so. So you need to look at all this together. And someone on the internet asked a question of sequencing. Well, I would say sequencing is probably a misleading way of looking at it, because you need all these policies together. So a matter of changing the weights. So in the short run, yes, I mean, do whatever you can to generate growth, employment, export earning, jobs. But in the longer run, the weight will have to change. So today you may encourage some polluting industries, but there has to be a strategy to phase it out, and how do you do it? I mean, that's the kind of how you should look at it, because it's not like you can do, say, job creation today, and then tomorrow it becomes growth, and the day after it becomes environmental sustainability. You have to do all of these things together. So the challenge is to kind of shifting the weights. So today 80% of our effort is in job creation. Yeah? Tomorrow it might be 60%. Yeah? Day after tomorrow, when we have especially successfully created a lot of jobs, it might become 40% of what we do, and so on. Yeah, there was a question on the potential problem with the presidential system against parliamentary democracy. I'm not enough of a political scientist, so I cannot comment on that, so I'll pass on that. And what do you need in the public sector other than better coordination? This is a very important question. Well, first of all, I would say that you need to build capabilities within the government machinery. And what better place to promote that than this place, National School of Government? Because in the end, I mean, you need to have capable people working in the government. Okay, training is not enough. I mean, you have to retain them because the private sector pays a lot more, so you need to make the salary not probably comparable, because in no country that it is comparable, except in Singapore, where they have actually an explicit formula where, say, the salary of a minister is something like 75% of the salary of top 5 corporation CEO. They have some formula like that, but in most other countries, it's not like that. But you could compensate with job security, more training opportunities, higher social status. So, but yeah, when you pay like so little money, that you cannot. I don't know what the salary situation is here, but you need to retain good people, and then also, sorry. Yeah. In order to, I mean, the retention is also important because there are a lot of things that you learn by doing, learn by being there, experiencing things and accumulating this knowledge. So that it is important to keep people for longer, but a lot of learning in the public administration is going to come from actually doing more things, because the conventional wisdom in the last few decades of neoliberalism has been that the less they do, it is better for the country. They meaning government officials. But now, I mean, this kind of the public sector management has created serious deficiency in capacity. I was in a meeting with meeting on industrial policy, and in my group there were a couple of British high-level civil servants who confessed that actually even if you gave us the best industrial policy ideas, we cannot implement it because we don't have the capacity to do it. Because in the last 20, 30 years, all we have done is to outsource to McKinsey or whoever. And our people actually don't know how to run these things. I mean, that's a very honest but depressing remark. So that in order not to be like that, the government, officials have to keep doing real things, not these fake things like sending out a tender to consulting companies and recruiting other people and without actually knowing what to do. And yeah, in the building the bureaucratic capabilities, the conventional wisdom has been that the countries that have succeeded with industrial policy like Japan, South Korea, they did it because they had this long tradition of the meritocratic bureaucratic system, and they had very well qualified people. This is bullshit, because they had the competitive civil service exam in the old days that according to this Confucian principle, but what were the subjects that you selected people for? It was basically political philosophy and poetry. I mean, what does that have to do with the economic development? So actually, in Confucian culture, people doing practical things were looked down upon, except for the farmers. So at the top were the scholar bureaucrats, and then the farmers, and then there were the artisans and the merchants. And there's a very strong barrier between the farmers and the artisans and below, because the farmers, at least in theory, could sit for civil service exam, but the artisans and merchants, they couldn't. So in the early days of economic development in the 1950s and 60s, no one who was half clever wanted to become a businessman or engineer, because these are lowly professions. Everyone wanted to study for civil service exam and work for the government. So we had a terrible problem. We had to change that, and initially the bureaucratic capability was so low that until the late 1960s, we were sending people, our government officials, to countries like Pakistan and the Philippines for training. Would you believe it? So these capabilities that can be built. They have been built. I think that you actually having this National School of Government is a great thing, because in many countries there's no systematic training of government officials, and having competent people working in the government is as important as, if not more, that having an organizational structure that promotes coordination and cooperation between different ministry, governments at different levels, the national, the state, local. So I would put the emphasis on that. Okay, I think I have said what I could. So I'll hand it over to the DG again.
Thank you very much, Professor Cheng. As I said, on the enemy's time, I wish we had more of it. A lot of wisdom came through from both presenters, actually. We've run a bit out of time, so I'm going to ask Prof. Ngaweni to come and give us a summary as well as key takeaways, and then we'll invite Dr. Kaunda to come and do her closing remarks. Thank you.
So, thank you, DG, and thank you to Prof. Chang for that intervention. Dr. Mondi, thanks for agreeing to come and be part of this conversation. And all of you colleagues who are here, there are some who are hybrid and others who are attending online. What we didn't tell you, Prof, that some of the issues we're talking about, there are men and women in this room who in their current or previous capacity were responsible for those. So there is a senior fellow of the National School of Government, Tsidiso Matuna, one of the longest serving official of the Department of Trade and Industry. He wrote South Africa's industrial policy. We can have a conversation later on about whether or not he contributed to the successes or the challenges you mentioned, but he is here. And of course, we've got Dr. Cassius Lubisi, a distinguished fellow of the National School of Government. He was responsible. He was in the seat that the DG next to you is sitting in for a decade. So he was responsible for coordination that you spoke about. And she has left now, Portia, who's the CEO of the rail and logistics company Transnet. Prior to that, she was DG of Public Enterprises, and there were initiatives that were taking place there, including managing management of power utility ESCOM. So in terms of what we will do going forward, colleagues, we are more practical. We will announce in the fullness of time our relationship with the SOAS, and this relationship will result in an introduction of a training program, executive course, which the National School of Government will be doing with SOAS. So there will be more time to deal with some of these things that are here. Why are we doing this type of training programs into the public sector? It's because we are hoping to build a new cadre of the civil service in South Africa that can effectively interpret political mandates. Secondly, that can diligently implement government program of action. Thirdly, that can give courageous advice to politicians, as DG Lubisi always reminds us. And thirdly, that can manage institutions effectively, which has been a challenge in some instances, but also a class of senior civil servants elected and appointed that can be driven by the national agenda, as Dr. Mondi has said. And finally, people who can think medium to long term in the pursuit of this national agenda. And of course, people are already qualified in their positions, but through executive programs, we're hoping to bridge, make people understand the perspectives and trends globally, and hopefully use those insights to make some important decisions. So that is what we will be doing. We will announce that executive program as soon as it is ready, and we're looking forward to that relationship with SOAS. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much, Prof. And we are excited at the revitalization of the National School of Government under your leadership, and we look forward to all these programs. To close the day for us, we're going to ask Dr. Lakela Kaunda, DDG Administration at NSG, to present the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, DG. I was thinking about that principle, that we are lucky we have the DG in the presidency and Secretary of Cabinet with a very busy schedule, but she was able to come here and run this program for us. And then we have also the former DG and Secretary of Cabinet, Dr. Cassius Lubisi. So that makes us feel very, very important as the NSG, because it means we are doing something in the right direction. It means they are noticing the work that we are doing. So we truly appreciate your presence here. And Prof. Chang, when you said that, we mentioned all the things that have gone wrong, and you said you were being rude. You were definitely not being rude. You were being very kind, being cruel to be kind. Because that's exactly what we aim to do here in the National School of Government with these thought leadership forums, to say public servants, both elected and appointed, must from time to time get away from their comfort zones and think and reflect on what has gone wrong. I mean, in 1994, the message was clear. We were going to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa. And President Mandela said a better life for all. And there was going to be an improved quality of life for all South Africans. So inequality was going to disappear. But then we are saying, where did we go wrong? So your presentation as well as the response by Dr. Mondi has reminded us that the train moved, but it got stuck somewhere. And your urgent message was, it can't remain stuck where it is, especially since we do have the policies. I mean, you made it clear that our economic trajectory was fixed in 2007. And as the principal said, there's the man there who was DG Trade and Industry, our fellow Mr. Sidiso Matu. Was going to say, why am I picking on trains? Because former CEO of Transnet. But the train needs to move, and thank you very much for that message, because we are also reminding us that why must we lead in having the lowest ratio of investment in our country at 16%? And again, Sidiso Matuna, there was to lose, and I won't be rude to the principal because I will lose this and that if I'm rude to him. At the end of the day, everybody must put South Africa first, the national interest, and then we'll move. So it's been an extremely fruitful session, which we're very grateful as the NSG, because public servants, we were saying we're not going to train public servants only to get their work done, which we must do and we are proud of doing, do their work perfectly, efficiently to build that capable developmental state. But we must also think, train them, remind them that they need to think. And the beauty of these thought leadership forums and these master classes, Prof, is that they're accessible to anyone in the public service. There could be a level 5 person right now listening to us. So they are very empowering online. Anyone can join in. So they sort of build the public service from the bottom up, open to anyone, because the information you were sharing may be known by people in this room who are in management, but junior public servants, for them it was, wow, we used to have a big manufacturing base. It's been decimated. What happened? How can we rebuild it? And then it then creates that thinking public servant. So we want to thank everyone who participated, Prof and the delegation from SOAS, Dr. Mondi for making the time, our DG, our former DGs, the management, and then everybody online, because we always see a smaller group here, but there's a massive audience online. It means a lot for us as the NSG that you made the time to reflect on this important question, because our country needs to move forward and it's our responsibility. All of us must play our role in moving us forward. Thank you very much. Yes, delegation.
Yes. So I'm told that I have the honor to dismiss the class at this point, and in the manner that we came in. The colleagues from SOAS will be led by the Prof, including Dr. Mondi, and for the rest of us, school is out. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government We'll work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batupele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is a building capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.